Finally, let's talk about how do you do this at warp speed. I spoke about tons of things right now, and you might be wondering, ki, yeah, this is far removed from the reality, and there's no way I can do this in my own setup, or any company would sponsor doing so much of extensive research. सबको चाहिए होता है कि सवेरे आप feature बताया, problem बताई, and I need to get the answer by evening, right? Uh, so let's look at user development at warp speed and how you can actually do it at a faster speed, relatively faster speed in the real environments, right? So when short on time, just do two things. One, extended one-on-one open format interviews that will give you a ton of ideas. And second approach is you take narrow, goal-directed, lean startup style, single issue research. कि आपने एक hunch लिया. You took a hunch, you took a shot that this seems to be a problem. Let me discover, let me dig deeper. Okay. So in real world scenarios at startups, you need to work at warp speed, at really fast speeds, shipping products and features as fast as possible. In this case, you won't have ample time to do in-depth user research or focus groups, right? So hence you need to tweak the process a bit to get the insights faster and to keep up with the development team's need for decisions, actionable insights. I'll just interject here that this also depends on the stage that the company is in and the product is in. You will remember that at very early stage in the product maturity scale, you would not get much time to do user research because things are moving really, really fast. So you might not get as much time as you would want. But as the maturity increases and the cost of failure increases, the companies would start giving you more leeway to actually doing this kind of user research. Okay. You can also use in the earlier slides I had mentioned about how to convince the stakeholders that that they should be doing by attacking their heart, head, or wallet. So you can do some of these interviews, get the results out, measure, and create some sort of a comparison with what is available today versus what the users are looking for, and then appeal for the heart, head, or wallet aspects of a business stakeholder who can sponsor your project. Right? So that's one approach. But let me just talk about a typical common scenario in a early startup. Right? So except on very simple consumer apps, I have personally shied away from focus groups and online surveys because हो नहीं पाता है, right? Focus groups mostly fail for me because a few participants tend to squander the time. That is what I observed. I told you that I have not done focus group because I never got convinced that there's something I can do. A few participants get very active and they will eat up the entire time. Baki sare participants just couldn't get involved. Right. The difference between individuals in these small groups are more interesting to me than their commonality. So I want to actually understand in the smaller groups कि ये क्यों कैसे you know how exactly did we get this motley group of people who are so different, right? Online surveys fail, in my humble opinion, because the assumptions and biases inherent in choose and answer models overwhelm the subtleties and interesting textures that participants want to provide, right? So I always want to ask a follow up. That is what my nature. That's why I typically, go for interviews. But then again, online surveys are also very, very effective. I personally know that when I have a large enough audience, then I will actually go for online service because I can get much more data. But for early startup जहाँ बहुत ज़्यादा users नहीं है, then surveys may not make much sense. I'll rather go for interviews, right? So what are the alternatives? I typically do a quick mix of these two things: interviews and very specific digging, right? Um, and when I do interviews, I'll typically ask very long-winded responses, like very long-winded questions. So describe your needs in your own words. How else would you solve this problem? I just gave you some certain examples, right? Ask very, very non-leading, very, very open-ended questions. How would you value a solution, and what's the natural pricing unit? What do you like and dislike about our approach, right? This is all about learning the unexpected and panning for occasional golden insights. You're just trying to get some nugget, some wow aha moment. Oh, I discovered something amazing. This is amazingly valuable, right? And you need to let that serendipity happen, right? And take good notes, record the video if possible, right? And then share them internally and listen for unexpected patterns, right? If you at least do 3 of these a month, like अगर तुमने 3 interviews देना शुरू कर देना every week, You will know more about your customer base than anyone else in 3 to 4 weeks. Within a month, you will be an expert about your user, and that is what you need to be, um, as a product manager. Everybody is going to see you as an expert, and this is the best way to actually become an expert with good amount of confidence that I know my users. Okay. The other thing I do is very specific research. So what I do is I create a very strong hypothesis. Yes, this is something, this is an approach that you will gradually hone as your experience grows, and you can start diagnosing purely based on your hunch. So you basically, what happens is you will start suspecting that prospects are having trouble getting through the sign up flow on your B2C site. Your hunch, because you believe that the UX could be simplified a little bit, and so on, right? So development has several proposed solutions based on overall good design. So which are the right ones, correct? So what I'll do is I will look at different hunches, and then I'll pick up the one which I believe will work well. I'll look for proxies, I'll look for approaches, and then I'll finally work with the one which I'll start testing with the one which I believe is good enough. Right? It's very uh, fluffy, yes, not too much data backed as such as ideally it should be, but then when you don't have data, then this is the best you can do, right? So now you have something urgent and focused. So pull a list of relevant customers, prospects, send them each a personal mail. So I have a certain resource, certain set of solutions that designers or developers have given me. What I'll do is I'll just pick those solutions. I'll pick 3 or 5 of them. I'll create a list of relevant customers, prospects, or potential users, and सबको एक एक personal email भेज दूंगा and ask for 15 minutes of face to face or of phone screen share, anything, right? And then I'll ask a few general questions and confirm that these folks are actually in your audience, right? So I'll confirm that okay, these users are actually my users, and then ask them what they were thinking when they will be doing something, right? Or how they will accomplish a task. Okay. So by doing this, you will end up. So you can see in both the cases, I'm actually doing interviews, but second while I'm going with a certain hunch before getting into the interviews. Okay. So in both the cases, I'll give you certain tips. Okay. You might invite a very select group of users composed of current users, potential users, and so on. Right. In person, over the phone with screen sharing is something that is perfect, right? Early in the morning is always best. Breakfast is more cost effective than lunch. I've seen that. Participants are more energetic as compared to lunch or dinner. They're already dead, so they just want to get home, right? You can give certain dollars. You can give $20 per hour if you feel like, or you can just sponsor their lunch money or dinner money, because some of them might not be very comfortable taking exact dollars for their art, right? For the phone participants or web participants, you can actually give them a Amazon gift card or something. Uh, I may also end up creating a rough wireframe or a high-level product spec as part of the script, right? And I will encourage the questions, or I'll take them through the certain flows, and I'll ask them, what will you do here? What will you click? जिससे कि I'll get a better insight, right? I'll conduct at least 2 sessions, uh, and so that I have a little wider spread and have a better I've removed biases, personal in selection bias or something. I can remove that, and finally I will debrief plus I'll transcribe the entire solution so that I can then conduct all the futuristic things. Remember the transcribe and the entire flow. I'll do that after that. So once you have done this, trust me, designers will respect you, developers will respect you, the business stakeholders will respect you, because now you have real answers with real questions with real users, right? Okay. Next question is how deep should you go? कितना research करना चाहिए? Because that will determine कि एक दिन में हो पाएगा, कि एक घंटे में हो पाएगा, एक महीने में हो पाएगा, right? So honestly, there is no direct answer to this, but I'll try to answer it, give you some sense of it. Right? So it depends on the goal of the research and the type and stage of the product as well as of the company. Okay, early stage company, obviously you'll not have a lot of data or the time to actually go for it. Um, Similarly, type and stage of product, you might again not have too much time because of or data if the product is too young. And what is the goal of research, right? Are you just, I mean, it's just a quick hunch that you want to get resolved, or it's going to, it's some, like for example, you're taking a very very large project of redesigning the entire thing. For example, if Evernote was getting redesigned entirely, or a major redesign was required, obviously you need to do a far more deeper research. Or if the product was mission critical, right, then obviously you would be very very careful in your research, and you would spend more time, right? So for example, for web products, you can ask questions like, is it a consumer product or do you have a business stakeholder, right? Are you trying to learn about customer interests or determining the user behavior? And what's the time horizon for decision making? Do you need the answer today, or do you need the answer, it's okay to get answer after 2 weeks, right? uh, And when you go about doing this research, it's like effectively what you're doing is, the way to do this is, uh, you need to figure out the, basically it all starts with a germ of an idea, right? So some customers have asked about a feature or a product. So you have got a feature request, or you have seen some competitor make some innovative progress, or there's a change in the industry landscape itself, and a new technology has emerged, or it's a completely blue ocean idea which you just hit upon. कुछ तो फंडू or कुछ तो interesting idea came up, and you are completely excited about it and you want to go for it, right? Once you have received an idea, you then define it and then refine it to simple terms with a clear value proposition and with easily understood feature points. Okay, you socialize with others, as in you basically talk to other stakeholders, you talk to your developers or potential users, uh, so to understand the product's angle, the technology angle, sales marketing team kya bol rahi hai, what do they think about it, and you include other stakeholders in the discussion. The idea is further refined and hopefully improved by these discussions, right? Then you size the market, you size the opportunity, and write the press release as if it were about to release tomorrow. Okay, it's a, I mean, so Marty Kagan, he's a very popular guy. He has written a book called Inspired, and he is very popular in SVPG group, Silicon Valley Product Group, uh, and he has written about, specifically about writing press releases. Okay, so I would also recommend Naeem Zafar's Market Research on a Shoestring. Naeem has also mentioned some really interesting tips and tricks. Do check both of them out. So these are the 5 steps in actually going about doing research, and I'll just go slightly deeper in the research. So you can take several step routes from here, right? So once you have done this outline, defining, socializing, and so on, now, so you have to evaluate few things. You have to look at few things, and this is where the art meets science. Okay, so is it a totally new product, new to the world concept with high risk, that is completely new, like the Model T car or iPhone, for example? How risk tolerant is your organization, or how expensive is it to develop, right? What are the potential rewards in comparison to these costs and to the opportunity cost of prioritizing this effort over other items in the pipeline? Correct. Is speed to market a concern? Is your competitors making a lot of difference and you need to quickly jump in? Right. That's the reason why, for example, bike startups are, for example, Uber bought bike startup immediately because they wanted to, make sure that they're not lagging behind. Right. Uh, So I wouldn't recommend it, but if speed and budget are not an issue and the organization is very risk averse and isn't concerned with the failing, with falling behind the competition, then each of these steps might be done in turn, right? So survey to gain quantitative insights into customer perceptions and needs. Survey kar lo. Then focus groups to get qualitative research that builds on the learnings of the quantitative research. Focus groups to present mock-ups of possible implementations, perhaps presented along with competitive implementations, to gain further insight into consumer preference and consumer perceptions. Eye tracker focus groups or heat map focus groups or simple focus groups with functioning prototype. So users are given tasks and then use the prototype. and competitive sites to complete those tasks, right? So you have given your prototype plus you have given the competitor task, and then you're trying to compare the usability. You compare the performance of the user and get a better sense of usability. Users then discuss, share their perceptions as in a normal focus group. This provides actual page site usage data and user perception and measures of user success in completed the desired action on the site. User testing, in which individual users are brought in sequentially and are presented with close to final prototype, or implementation and are asked to complete specific tasks. Right, so you can do a whole bunch of things one after the other. If the company is completely risk averse, so you can indulge yourself basically. You can go as deep as you want, correct? But honestly, it is overkill and most likely will not get this much of time. Okay, uh, you know, so it is an overkill for most product refinements and small launches. Okay, uh, but it's very important to get few of the goals or gates uh, absolutely clarified. So, is there general interest in the concept? Is there a need or desire? You definitely want to get an answer to that. What possible implementations might work best? What forms of solutions are people liking the most? Right? You need to get an answer to that as well. Does our suggested implementation make sense to consumers? Are there any silly UX errors that create user confusion? Right? Is this the best implementation? So you want to get answers to this, whether like irrespective of how indulgent you are with the entire exercise, you need to get answer to at least one these five answers questions definitely, right? Also, I would like to highlight that I'm a firm believer in constant A/B testing. Okay, uh, but at the same time, you need to do other research, so that A/B testing is not the only research. It's a little more on the quantitative side. So you also do qualitative research apart from quantitative research. So bottom line is this: if it's a low effort, low risk, throw it out there. Then simply just go ahead and test it. Don't spend too much time at it. Like 2 घंटे के अंदर plan it in 2 hours and just go for it. But if it's a larger effort, get your customers lined up, sell it, at least sell the concept, right? Take money in or take something in before you build it, before you write even a single line of code, and use your research as necessary to refine your implementation. Okay, don't do it. Just don't allow your developers to code anything before you've tested it and validated it. Trust me, spending 2 days or 20 days extra on this is way more worthwhile than actually coding something and then throwing it away. Unless the only way to actually test it out is coding a throwaway prototype. Okay, we are almost at the end of the topic, and I just want to touch upon a very simple concept of buyer research. So understand that buyer is not equal to user all the time, and I just want to clarify this. So as anyone in B2B or enterprise knows, users are only one half of the equation, right? You also need to solve problems for the person who writes the check. So a lot of scenarios, the person who writes the check is very different from the user. So for example, in Baiju's case, it's the parent who's writing the check, but it's the student or the kid who is reading or who is studying. Correct? He's a user. Similarly, in a large setup, a B2B SaaS platform, the check would be signed by the executive, the CEO, the CXO, or top management guy, while the actual user would be some executive level guy, right? Some operations level guy, correct? So operations level guy's requirement will be very different. He is going to use the product very differently. While the person who is writing a check, he would be looking for or hoping for very solid reports, right? While the reporting data is just not useful for the end user. Right? So the single best way of getting information from your buyer is by sitting in a room with them and asking targeted probing questions. Right? Your goal is to understand them well enough to know their problems, needs, and goals. But as you can imagine, this is easier when you already have relationships with these people or companies, right? But in only talking to existing customers, you are ignoring the most profitable segment of your market, the ones you haven't sold to yet, right? If you're just going to talk to your existing customers, then you will never get to understand the other side, which is basically the people who are not yet bought in, who are not your customers yet, correct? So this means you should spend most of your time and effort trying to talk to potential customers, right? And as you can imagine, this can be very, very difficult. Assuming you know who your buyer is, let's assume for a second, you know who your buyer. You have segmented that, okay, Fortune 500 companies are our buyers. And within Fortune 500 companies, the VP marketing who is going to typically buy our product, right? Um, and this gets very, very complex. Trust me, it gets very, very complex. When selling large products with large organizations, as you may have multiple such buyers, there can be tiers. So that's why, for example, selling products to schools or universities become very difficult because the buyers are multi-tiered. So you have to convince the parents, you have to convince the teacher, then you have to convince the principal, then you have to convince the trust. By the time that this happens, the startup is already dead. I was so at Oyo, I was building a product for uh, the law enforcement agencies like police and the intelligence agencies. Being in hospitality industry, we have a requirement to fill up A&D registers, arrival and departure registers, right? So we were trying to automate a whole bunch of things. I cannot go into specific details, but I just want to talk about. I was essentially building product for the law enforcement agencies. So you can imagine the tears that I had to go through, right? So I was, so while the end user was going to be some havaldar at some chowki or some police station, but the person who was going to approve it was going to be the commissioner of police Delhi or commissioner of police Gurgaon, right? So you can imagine there was a whole difference between the user and the buyer, and I had to balance the requirements at both the ends. Correct. We ended up successfully launching the product. So I was, I'm happy to say that I was successful there. Okay. Right. So this can be, so finding these buyers is very, very difficult. And unless you have people in your network who fit the persona, you're going to have to work hard to get to access to these people, right? So you have to find them. Your classified or OLX or Craigslist ads will not work when you're looking for the VP of sales, for example, in a very large firm, correct? These people are often senior and hard to get to. I mean, there's a good chance you will not be able to score a meeting with them, right? Because you will be viewed as a sales pitch, correct? So you have to physically get to them, right? So travel, planes, or hotels, which is very expensive and time consuming, and most likely you'll not be even getting approvals for this, right? Uh, then, because you want to talk to them, there's a good chance that your $50 gift card is also not going to work there, correct? uh, and you have to do all this while keeping sales happy. I'm talking largely about a B2B setup here, right? So your sales team are going to want to join you and sell as you have effectively created a lead, right? So if you have done this legwork of finding, scoring a meeting with a VP of marketing in a large company, your sales team would want to come along with you, right? Because they would also want to sell. But you know that if you let them come, uh, you might end up biasing the entire interview, correct? So this will invalidate any information you get in this interview, right? So eventually, of course, you do want to sell to these people, but you want this to be a pull operation once you've understood and solved their problems so well that they have no choice, correct? So how do you find them, right? So it will take some effort, and don't be disheartened. So I remember when I was doing my first sale at Tushki early days. So I had to send almost 40 LinkedIn, in-mails, like shamelessly. I had to send 40 LinkedIn emails, and had only one response, about one or two responses. That's it, right? But just understand that as long as you have a real solution to a problem this person has, or you have a real good understanding of the core problem, you'll get the you'll get the buyers, or you'll get the people or the personas. Okay. So if you lead with that core problem, you'll end up getting the attention that you required. So I guess by sending 40 LinkedIn emails, I was able to refine my pitch, that maybe the 40th or I don't know which one hit the nail, and it actually got me the right people that I wanted to talk to. Right. So few ways I'm suggesting, few ways. So source a list of potential candidates. So you can use your CRM, you can use LinkedIn, you can use social channels or your own personal network. You obviously prioritize the ones you're connected to, the second or third level connections. So LinkedIn would be your friend here. Try to get introduction via contacts. A lot of these is very commonsensical, but I'm just covering for hygiene purposes, right? Contact the remainder of your list via phone, email, or social. So prioritize the ones with whom you have some connection, first degree, second degree, third degree. Um, and if you have some common connect, then try to first get an introduction done before you actually reach out to them. Okay. All the remainder, try to send a mass email or a social or a phone, whatever works for you. Okay. Obviously, expect a very small uh, response rate, about 4%. Single digit mein aayega, you'll get an answer. So once you do talk to the people, have a pitch prepared. Always prepare a pitch. Offer something in return, coffee, lunch, whatever works. Just understand what matters for that person, right? It's important. So when you're doing this, you're trying to create a relationship as well, and you never know what relationship works where. So make sure that you have a good first impressions. Okay. So if you get a lot of rejections at this phase, you may not have picked a painful enough problem. So at this stage itself, if a lot of people are rejecting you, understand that you just have not picked up the right problem, a painful enough problem. It's a vitamin problem. It's not a painkiller problem, right? And once you get the interview, ideally in person, plan out what you want to prioritize learning. Remember that, right? You want to learn something, right? Uh, so remember to discover in depth how that person solves the problem today. Okay, even if it's not a competitor's product, like anything, pen and paper use karta hai, what does he do? Is he carrying a complex Excel doc? Does he have a large whiteboard through which he is tracking things? Just make sure that you are staying on track and you are unearthing what exactly is he doing today. Okay. uh, I did mention about sales. How do you handle sales? There's no cookie cutter answer, there's no straightforward answer, to be very honest. Each organization is different. If it's a product focused CEO, obviously it will be very easier to to get support of that CEO. But if it's a sales focused CEO, you might not get that good an answer. I mean, sales focused CEO is going to ask you to just take along the sales guy, right? So it's very important to have a heart to heart, get it clarified that this is the reason why I'm doing this, why I'm going, and make sure that that you are able to convince them, or at least try to convince them about the long term output of the entire exercise, right? So if you do this well, you will end up creating a good set of potential buyers who are not users, right? So this is the entire exercise, and I wanted to touch upon this because this is an incredibly difficult uh, thing. A lot of this is very commonsensical, but I think this would give you some direction. And finally, I would like to end this entire topic on user research on synthesizing the research. How do you synthesize the research? There are multitude of examples and methods, like the 20 methods that I explained earlier. There are a whole bunch of things that you can do, but I'm just going to cover two here, and then I'll expose you to just two fantastic videos which will cover the entire piece. So one is a 2 by 2 matrix, which is a classic MBA 101. Even Steve Jobs has used it multiple times in his own pitches because they're so simple yet so easy to understand, right? And they give you a very large overview, right? They give you 10,000 feet view, right? It's a simple 2 by 2, right? And the other one is feature gap analysis. Now, feature gap analysis in this case is being done against iPhone, against Moto Q, BlackBerry, and so on. While you can also do iPhone, or let's say, for example, iPhone versus a totally dumb phone or a pager. You can even do that, but depending on what exactly are you comparing against. So it need not be exactly a product. It could be anything that the user is doing to get that particular job done today, right? So, for instance, I remember the jobs to be done framework that I mentioned earlier. Uh, One of the common examples that is stated is for the early For a large segment of users who consume milkshake in the morning, they consume milkshake in the morning primarily because they want to avoid boredom in their commute. We're talking about a US centric audience. So US centric audience is a very peculiar tendency, not as Indian mindset. So there, they typically in the morning they will just drive in to a quick serve restaurant like a McD or Carl's Jr. or something, and they will order a burger and a milkshake, and they will walk off. Right? That's the reason why drive-ins are very popular there. So after a research, it was discovered that people who were coming in the morning, they were buying a whole ton of milkshakes. Okay, and the milkshakes, as soon as the thickness level of the milkshakes was changed, the buying rate dropped. And the reason that was attributed to it was that people were buying milkshakes because they wanted to have something during their commute from their home or to the home to the office a little more interesting. Because anything else, like if they were eating burger, their hands will get dirty, the car will get dirty. Well, milkshakes come in nice containers. It's easy to sip, and there's something to do all through the journey, right? Because if it's thick enough, it takes that much time to consume, right? So in this case, if I had to, if I was doing a feature gap analysis of for a particular problem of boredom during commute, milkshake would be a potential competitor. Correct. Okay, coming back to these two tools. So as a PM, you would be responsible for conducting as well as synthesizing your research, right? So if you do a brilliant job conducting the research, but then don't convey your results into a simpler, clear model, you would fail. I mean, your team would not understand it. You lost the entire purpose, right? So when it comes to conveying market and competitive research, there are two very simple tools that I also use a lot of times. One is 2 by 2, and the other one is feature gap. There's a whole in when we'll jump to the um, when we'll go to the prioritization unit. This feature gap analysis actually takes a whole larger shape. It takes a life of its own, and I'll go much deeper in that. But right now, it's I think it's worthwhile to just look at this in the current form. Okay. So with both tools, I'm just trying to take a large amount of detail and boil it down to a visual that shows how will you fit into the competitive landscape and understand you'll always be in a competition. So either not, if not direct, then indirectly people are doing something else to fill their to do their task, right? So unless you're pursuing a low cost strategy, so offering the same thing as a competition but cheaper, you're looking for sustainable differentiation, right? So both of these tools visually show how you will differentiate and stand apart from competitors. Okay. So the 2 by 2 metric started out as a consultant's best friend, but but is now widely used. Almost everybody uses 2 by 2. Right. I'm convinced that any opportunity in life can be simplified down to a 2 by 2 matrix that articulates your choices. In product work, Steve Jobs was a fan of the 2 by 2 matrix, and he has used that in plenty of presentations. Even in this 2007 announcement, which is a screenshot of this, he showed the competitive landscape using a 2 by 2 because that is the dumbest or the easiest way for anybody to understand immediately, right? Uh, Another example is which I remember about Jobs is when he returned to Apple in 1997, he realized that the company was producing way too many products. The product portfolio was all over the place. So he drew a 2 by 2 consumer versus pros, professionals, and desktop versus laptop. Right. So consumer versus pros and desktop versus laptop, and focus the company on just those four quadrants. That's it. Like either we're going to produce for consumer laptops or consumer desktops, or professional desktops or professional laptops. Nothing else. I'm talking 1997, obviously. 10 years later, he obviously drew it for smartphones as well, right? So similarly, if this 2 by 2 is 10,000 feet view, then this feature gap analysis 1,000 feet view, right? So with this tool, the PM is trying to show which value proposition or features their product will offer as against the competition. The feature gap analysis was popularized almost 80 years ago by Consumer Reports. It's very, very popular. It's also called QFD. I mean, a much larger version is called QFD, which is quality function deployment, or house of quality or house of functions. I'm forgetting the exact term, but it is a much larger format, right? The concept is very simple. Basically, what you'll do is you'll list down all the features, all the attributes that matter to you, and then you will list down all the competitors that exist. Okay, and then you will start creating these pie charts or Harvey balls, इसको Harvey balls भी बोलते हैं, or Harvey balls, and depending on you know, and you will compare these feature one against, for example, iPhone, Moto Q, and so on and so forth, and you will start filling up the ones which have this feature completely sorted. For example, iPhone is completely sorted, so it is completely green, while other ones are completely blank. While some of them will have partially sorted, half sorted, and so on. Correct. So with this gap analysis, what you're trying to essentially show is where your product is as compared to the competition in a very quick visual format. No numbers, nothing, just visual format. Correct. And this will give you a very quick understanding of how large is the gap for you. So, for example, feature 6 seems to be the case where iPhone is lagging behind the competition. Not so much, but to some degree, because Moto Q also is not doing. Moto Q is doing a decent job. Palm Trio is doing a decent job, but BlackBerry and Nokia E62 is the same plane, right? So unless I'm facing a lot of heat from Moto Q and Palm Trio, I will not prioritize this. Correct. Uh, And one more thing. So this feature gap analysis is a good starting point for how to think about marketing and branding your product. Correct? Because this also gives you a good segregation of what features or what features could potentially be marketable because your product is so much better than the competing products. Right? So when you market your product, you want to focus on the benefits and how you are better. So you get answer to the second question very easily. Right? Another tool here is empathy map, which is used as to, after you've done research, if you've done interviews largely, you will end up with a lot of things that were said versus what they actually did versus what they actually felt versus what they actually thought, right? So you can create an empathy map, and basis that then you can translate into user stories. Okay, in the speaker notes, I have given a link for some additional reading. Plus, this interactiondesign.org has some pretty awesome content around user development research. Please follow up. And finally, I will leave you for today's session. I will leave you with um two great talks. Oops, both of them started. No. Okay, so two very good talks. The slide in this one is not too clear, but this guy is pretty awesome. He's from Frog Design. Frog Design is one of the best design firms out of Valley. They're pretty good. So do read about them, what they talk about synthesis. In the end, I'll just leave you with a simple thought that while synthesizing, your entire goal is to demystify and distill the entire information that you have gathered into simplistic format because this information is going to be consumed by developers, designers, business stakeholders, right? And so unless and until it is badly needed, you should just keep it very high level. Okay. I've also added a couple of links in this slide also as a reading material. Plus, I've added a ton of study material in the live class unit. Please go through it. It's a ton of material and it's very critical because user development is one thing that I have seen a lot of people shunting because, you know, because as a product manager, you typically don't get much support from the organization. But irrespective of that, you need to do it. And so you need to figure out what is the best way uh, to get about doing user research. Don't skimp it. Please do it. Trust me, you will save a lot of heartburn. Plus, most importantly, you will earn a lot of street cred. You'll be able to a lot of things get done because you're the only one who has spoken to this customers and you know the customers in and out. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. I'm not going to run this videos. Please watch it at your own time. That's it for today, guys. I hope this gave you a good, solid understanding of the entire paradigm of user research. right from personas, archetypes, how to do user research in a very small, in a very fast, in a very stealthy way, to how do you do user research in a startup at a warp speed, and how do you do user research when you actually have the resources, or your startup has grown to a larger scale. Right? Uh, I'm sure. See, user research alone is a very very vast topic, and if I just start covering it, trust me, the entire month would go away, and we would still not have covered everything. So my attempt was largely to expose you to everything that exists, everything that matters, everything that you should know about. Uh, you will most likely not be using most of it. You'll be using interviews, you'll be using surveys, and you'll be using clickstream, you'll be using heat maps. But it's very important to know spatially uh, where do all these things lie, what are you doing, and why are you doing it before you actually start doing it. And don't just do it because for the heck of it. Okay. So hopefully I was able to answer, or I was able to clarify a lot of these things. We'll be conducting a Q&A session very soon. I'll share the timelines for that separately. Okay. Take care.